I want you to travel with me, if you will, back a few years. I'm not really sure when it was when she first came on the television, but I was mesmerized by the 12-year-old orphan on the screen. I had finished the novel. It was divine, and I was so ready to see Haley Mills as Pollyanna. You might know this story. It's the story of 12-year-old orphan Pollyanna, who is described as cheerful, optimistic youngster who is doggedly focused on the goodness of life. She is always glad. She teaches a wide variety of doubters in her new community how to be glad no matter what. And when she suffers a paralyzing accident, the formerly resistant, crabby, decidedly unglad community undergoes this change of heart. They come to her assistance by returning the optimism that she had shared so generously within each of them. And everyone is transformed in the giving and the receiving of hope. It is from this novel and movie that we have that wonderful identifier. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? She, he is such a Pollyanna. And of course, in our more doubtful and defensive moments, we might issue our own or another sense of hope as we level the accusation, oh, don't be such a Pollyanna. Over the decades, in everyday conversation, the pejorative stance on being a Pollyanna translates to being viewed as a cockeyed, cheerful, for no good reason, goody two-shoe. The research, however, does not support this cynical, bah humbug attitude at all. Quite to the contrary, scientific studies have revealed a clear bias towards positivity in the way that we communicate with one another. It began in 1969 when researchers Busher and Osgood put forth the Pollyanna hypothesis. Their research included the small-scale cross-cultural studies, which suggested that a universal positivity bias exists deep down in human connection. They uncovered evidence that positive words are not only prevalent, but have a significant impact and the ability to shape our thinking and our behaviors in a positive direction. Fast forwarding to just about a year ago, in a study of the proceedings of the International Academy of Sciences, researchers now will tell us and confirm for us that the Pollyanna hypothesis, using an exhaustive, data-driven analysis of 5 million individual human scores, concludes this. Overall, they say, our major scientific finding is that words, which are the atom of human language, present an emotional spectrum with a universal and positive bias. Now, well, when considered only philosophically, hope more often than not seems to be at odds with the rational analytical thinking. But due to its proactive nature, hope in action touches the heart, and it creates its own validation. A good example of this is found in philanthropic work, right? Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates, for example, in 2015, in the annual Gates letter, he wrote, optimism for me isn't that things will get better. It's the conviction that we can make things better, that whatever suffering we see, no matter how bad it is, we can help people if we don't lose hope and we don't look away. Hope and a positive outlook embody a creative and a contagious quality. This can be seen in the work of the Los Angeles artist Mary Beth Heffernan. Her images of these scary looking suits that the healthcare workers on the front lines of the Ebola epidemic wore disturbed her. And she felt that they made her selfless workers look like this menacing stormtrooper of a person. So she wondered how difficult it would be for the Ebola patients to not be able to see a person's face for days on end. And she believed that there must be a way to alleviate this problem. This hope led her to create photo kits. Her idea was to take a photo of the smiling healthcare worker and then print the picture on large stickers. And each time the worker donned on the protective gear, they would affix the photo sticker onto the chest of the suit. And she relayed her idea across the world and succeeded in getting her photo kits to West Africa. And hope and determination trumped each setback. And eventually the project started working. And these photos have made such a difference in both for the suffering of patients and for the tireless workers previously hidden in those massive protective suits. We have also attributed ourselves to that during this last pandemic. You might have noticed some people had their faces, "This is what I look like," the signs might say. The healthcare heroes are no longer faceless. The brave patients don't feel as alone, as isolated, because now they see the warmth, the human, the friendly face that's underneath the suits that are delivering hope from Ebola to COVID and all sorts of other isolating medical conditions. But when all is said and done, we don't need scientific studies to prove to us in the church the inestimable value of having and sustaining and sharing hope. For those of us working hard to improve our health in spite of huge challenges, hope forms an indispensable infrastructure of internal love and support. Hope is about your soul, it's about your brain, it's about your eyes, it's what you hear, it's what you pour into, it's who you surround yourself with. It is deep inside of you. Hope tends to beget more hope. By keeping hope alive within us, we are automatically inducted into the Pollyanna Hall of Fame. And there we join with the ranks of Bill Gates and Mary Beth Heffernan and countless others who are determined to bring life and light into places of loss and darkness. But it starts with our own hearts. So with that space in your heart and your mind and your deepest soul, I would like for you to hear these words from the letter to the Romans from Paul. From the Voice Bible paraphrase we have before us today, the 12th chapter of Romans, verses 9 through 21, hear and believe. Love others well, and don't hide behind a mask. Love authentically. Despise evil. Pursue what is good as if your life depends on it. Live in true devotion to one another, loving each other as sisters and brothers. Be first to honor others by putting them first. Do not slack in your faithfulness and hard work. Let your spirit be on fire, bubbling up and boiling over as you serve the Lord. Do not forget to rejoice, for hope is always just around the corner. Hold up through the hard times that are coming and devote yourselves to prayer. Share what you have with the saints so they lack nothing. Take every opportunity to open up your home to others, and open up your life in the same way. If people mistreat or malign you, bless them. Always speak blessings, not curses. If someone has a cause to celebrate, join in the celebration. And if others are weeping, join in that as well. Work towards unity and live in harmony toward one another. Avoid thinking that you are better than others or wiser than the rest. Instead, embrace common people and ordinary tasks. Do not reiterate with evil regardless of the evil brought against you. Try to do what is good and right and honorable as agreed upon by all people. If it is within your power, make peace with all people. Again, my loves, do not seek revenge. Instead, allow God's wrath to make sure justice is served. Turn it over to God, for the scriptures say, "Revenge is mine. I will settle all scores." But consider this bit of wisdom. If your enemy is hungry, give him something to eat. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, because if you treat her kindly, it will be like heaping hot coals on top of her head. Never let evil get the best of you. Instead, overpower evil with the good. Oh, in the scripture, there is that sweeping affirmation from Paul that affirms all human beings. And therefore, the church and her people must stand and must appreciate and equip people to be about the diversity of God in all of his forms, and thus having cautioned the early Christians to be transformed, to be about the renewing of their minds and their attitudes and their conscience. Here we have Paul imploring us, making his clarion call around love and around hope. And from that place of hope, we then open the door of hospitality and of faith. I want to repeat that. It is from that place of hope that we live out the radical love of God. This love that could be demonstrated to those outside the confines of the church walls, but it all starts with hope. And that's hard right now, this hope. It seems that every day, email feeds and 24-hour news cycles and everywhere we turn seems hell-bent on the causes that separate us. That they're too big, they're too vast, they're too divided. Hope seems in short supply. We're struggling to live in the gospel way, aren't we? We are inconsistent with our proclamation that in our hands and in our feet and with our voices, we welcome both inside and outside our church walls, because what we're feeding to ourselves with our 24-hour news cycles does not proclaim that we are about life and life in God's name. At this church, at Florence Christian Church, we are welcoming unsheltered folks to shower and have grace. And yet in Kentucky, about 40% of adults are considered in the low literacy group. 40%. At this church, we are also thriving in our small groups and fellowship opportunities. And yet still, outside the walls of Florence Christian Church, the level of seniors living in poverty is truly horrifying. At this church, we help educate in safe and loving environment children from all walks of life in early education. And yet the opioid and heroin epidemic here in Kentucky is most certainly, touching the lives of many adults that these same children probably interact with. It's so easy to rest on our laurels. How we're faithful in what we are doing, how astounding it is. And it is truly astounding. Inside our building, dreaming about what is next in our life together. And yet, church, God is always calling us to be agents of hope. Mercy, justice, it's not just inside our walls. You know, Jesus and Paul and Peter and the gospel writers advocated for hope, and they advocated for love. And likewise, today's church, and be in the hope business, it must be in the hope business. It must constantly continue to relearn the art of love. And without these as pillars, our hope and our love and our faith, our works honestly are meaningless. Therefore, this work that we're called to, that Paul alludes to, is to hold on to hope no matter what. And that the love that we are called to live out is not an emotional one, but it's one that comes from the transforming and the spiritual rebirth of our minds and our souls and our hearts. As I shared among your staff a few days ago, being about the work of God in the world is not about ability. It's about availability. That practical place you hold on to even when it seems impossible or dark or unattainable. It's how we live out the gospel ways that always cherish others. This love that seeks justice and forgiveness and reconciliation and peace. Availability. In her book, Help, Thanks, Wow, Anne Lamott describes the power of hope in the following way. She writes, hope begins in the dark. The stubborn hope that if you just show up and you try to do the right thing, the dawn will come. You don't give up. Church, when all is said and done, we don't need the scientific studies to prove to us about sustaining and sharing hope. As the people of God, we proclaim it every day. As the people of God, we have to live in our hope. It has to be our foundation. We're in the hope business, and it's time to get to work. Thanks be to God. when we gather our prayers and our hopes together to create a sustainable, gospel-bringing budget together to form our ministry plans for the coming year. Our plans help us translate hope into action. If you're a church member, you recently received information about our annual stewardship campaign and how to share your planned giving with the church. And I personally want to thank you for the creative ways that this church has been, is, and will be faithful in the coming years. On the screen, in just a few moments, will be a QR code that you can scan with your personal device, and you can make a gift today. But during your prayerful reflection, I hope that you'll reflect on how you can help support the ministries of Florence Christian Church for the year to come. Be in that place of love and hope and living and renewing. During our prayerful reflection, we're going to hear the song Offering from our music leader, Andra Moran. And may God find us living our faith in our gifts, in our tithes, and in our offering.